October in a presidential election that could see Paul Biya, now 92 years old and in power since 1982, win an unprecedented eighth term. Let's find out the latest now we'll speak to Mimi Mefo, Cameroonian journalist and human rights activist, to just speak about what the environment has been like. Biya abolished presidential term limits in 2008, removing constitutional constraints on how many times he could run. Mimi Mefo is a Cameroonian journalist and speaks to us also as a human rights activist. A very good evening to you, and thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us.
Thank you so much for having me. How are you doing?
I'm well, thanks, Mimi, and we do apologize for keeping you holding.
No
Unfortunately, as you can
problem. It's
imagine,
okay.
breaking news, crises everywhere. We're seeing what's happening in Madagascar. And I'm just thinking, we have this upsurge of protests in Madagascar because of what particularly young people are seeing as unconstitutional actions by the Rajoelina administration. What are young people in Cameroon thinking about the fact that Paul Biya, 92, is seeking re-election for the eighth time?
Young people have seen it enough. They are exhausted, tired, and for over most of them have known just one president because Cameroon has had just two presidents in its history ever since the country existed. And Paul Biya, we all know just Paul Biya. For the first president, we were not there as young Cameroonians. So they are just fed up. They are just tired. But for the first time, we are seeing a different kind of momentum building in the country where young people are deciding to take matters into their hands. I'm talking within the context of the presidential election that took place just yesterday, the 12th of October, where we saw young people not just going to vote out what they call more than 40 years of dictatorship and stagnation, but they were going to vote for freedom, change. They didn't care what policies the various opposition party leaders were offering. They just saw it as that window of opportunity to freedom and change. When you speak to some of them, because we spoke to many of them, and ask them that why would you prefer this candidate and not the incumbent? They will tell you that they are not choosing any other candidate because of policies. The policies will come later. They'll think about what the different opposition party leaders are offering later. But let the dictator just go. Let the leader who is there just go. They just want change. So for the first time, we are seeing a different kind of, it's not like a physical, like the confrontational kind of revolution in Cameroon, but some sort of mental revolution where young people are clamoring for change. And they know that that change cannot happen if they are not part and parcel of it.
They're
They
voting
cannot
with their
wait for
thumbs,
anyone.
so to speak.
Right,
So,
right. They
Mimi,
cannot wait for a miracle.
let's talk
Mm.
about the election results because I believe vote counting is happening as we speak. Are they announcing those preliminary results, and are they reflecting that drastic change that you say young people are seeking?
Well, we have seen early polls that are not yet official. To be very honest with you, we've seen um, something very shocking. And we've also seen different opposition party leaders that took part in the election reacting, like Barrister Akerimona reacting. We have Ateki, who was a presidential candidate, reacting, and members of the other opposition parties, like the Social Democratic Front Party members, and individuals from the different opposition parties saying that the people have spoken and that the people's choice should be respected. So they are affirming that victory is not on the side of the incumbent. And we saw results emerging from the different polling stations where young people were jubilating because they felt like victory was on their side. We saw results from the different regions and some parts also of the Anglophone regions where we've had conflict for over 10 years now, for 10 years now. Young people jubilating, people celebrating. I would not want to be biased as a journalist, but more than 90% of results that I've come across show that the incumbent is not winning.
Now, we've seen the fact that there have been noteworthy opposition leaders who have been kept out of being part of the elections. Maurice Kamto, he was prevented from taking part in the elections. We have seen, as well as other figures, Mr. Bakare be part of those who are galvanizing young people to vote. But it all comes down to Elecam and its performance. Has there been an indication that they have been able to put on a free and fair elections, especially as observers are saying that, they have seen an election without suspense? And I'm wondering what without suspense really means.
Well, for Professor Maurice Kamto, I should say that the rejection of his candidacy kind of dimmed momentum for a while, but it was just for a moment. And after that, when we saw that different opposition party leaders actually emerged, it kind of changed things because people didn't. I personally, when we started this coverage, I mean, since the start of this year, we knew it was an electoral year. And we were thinking that if Professor Maurice Kamto is not part of the competition, who is that person who is likely to really stand out? No one saw Issa Shoma Bakari standing out as we see now. So with time, that some sort of fizzled out. I mean, that momentum that people were thinking that without, because we even had the no come to no vote, a slogan that was circulating around. Later, it switched completely from that hashtag to no coalition, no vote, meaning that many Cameroonians, they switched so quickly. And we should know that Professor Maurice Kamto's candidacy was denied because of what the country's laws stipulate, that if you are not having a local representative in parliament or at the council level, you cannot run for post of president, which was something lacking in the party of Professor Maurice Kamto. But we don't want to get into the nitty-gritty of that. But talking about Elections Cameroon, the elections governing body in the country, there are so many loopholes when it comes to Elections Cameroon. I mean, from the registration process to the time when people are preparing to go to the polls, and even yesterday's voting process, we saw a lot of loopholes. From the registration process, you see even names of people on the list that have already died. So the system is not updated. It's kind of I say it's still it's not up to date, because we've seen people who have died already. We've seen people who have relocated to different regions of Cameroon or even left the country, but you could still see their names in Cameroon on the list. So those are some of the things that we have been able to identify. And also, when it comes to Elections Cameroon, people have always described the results from the elections governing body as unfair, and it's lacking a lot of credibility. So there are a lot of questions around the elections governing body in the country.
Mimi, I do hope you allow us to come back to you at some point to find out the latest. Much appreciated for your time today and bringing us up to speed on what is happening in Cameroon post the elections. This weekend, Mimi Mefo is a Cameroonian journalist and human rights